Hello and welcome to a late edition of Blind Eye Live. I am your host, Blind Eye himself, Hunter King, owner and proprietor of Blind Eye Media. And I had to delay the stream today because I guess everybody within a 3-house radius of my place decided it was yard work day. All at the same time. Seriously, about 45 minutes ago, there were literally 3 different yards within eye shot of my front door where people were mowing their front lawn. There is still someone going. But oh my goodness, the noise. And so I decided to wait, and I hope that guy's not coming across on the mic. I'm not getting any levels when I'm not talking. So anyway, on the show today, we've got the Blind Eye Media NFL Awards, which, let's just say, we might cover some winners and losers, but we're going to have some fun with this. Because plenty of stuff went down. We'll have some different categories where I'll rank, like, maybe, best signings, worst signings, the biggest trades, the most important moves. But I've also got some goofy little gimmicks. So we'll do that. And then we'll get into some college football talk. I see the landscape shifting. And I don't mean necessarily just with the NIL stuff. I'm talking program stuff. Because after last year, I think a lot of things that people saw as let me try this. Yeah, I like the level on that better. I think some things people saw as givens, as, rules that had no exceptions were broken last year. And it'll be easier to word. I'm trying to figure out kind of like a tag in for later, I guess, at the moment. But the idea for me is that I really think that we're about to see some major shifting happen. Because there's always stuff that goes up and down in college football season by season. But there has been a massive amount of investment from teams that were not as heavily invested even a year ago in their football programs. Heck, some schools just investing heavier than they have in all their sports in a while. So with that being said, we'll get into that later. I did kind of want to hit some headlines real quick. So let's see how this new camera placement actually works out for me. That I should have set up before the stream. I just got the idea. I'm like, I kind of wish this was a little higher. So let's hit it. So this is ESPN's front page. I will say, so yesterday the United States did qualify for the World Cup. The men's soccer team, despite getting drubbed, and I say drubbed 2-0 or 2-0 by Costa Rica, because I'm just going to be frank. Like, who cares if we made the World Cup? Because I don't think this team's going to get out of the group stage, because to me, they don't, like, these guys don't care, or they think they're better than they are. Like, America like the U.S. is so desperate. We are so desperate for greatness that anybody who's even remotely good becomes a star for us. And they haven't earned it. Necessarily. And I love a lot of guys on this team, but I mean, there's just something missing. And maybe it's because of investment, and maybe it's because our 4th and 5th rate athletes are still choosing soccer. I'm sorry. The best athletes in the country, they're picking football, they're picking basketball, they're picking baseball. In some regions, you know, they're picking hockey, you know, over soccer. I mean, soccer's growing, but I mean, baseball's still bigger than soccer in the United States. And even, you know, people talk about youth soccer levels. Like, I played youth soccer. And then I eventually played, like, you know, or made the team my senior year of high school, although I had to kind of drop out of that. But, because of my vision stuff. But, you know, that was my 4th sport. Like, loved playing baseball. And then basketball and football were easily my top 2 to watch and play. Like, football's always been my first love. But, you know, there's not football year-round. And some people just put their kids in it to just have them do something. You know? So, anyway. U.S. draws England, Mexico, and Argentina. Oh, no, sorry. U.S. draws England, Mexico to face Messi's Argentina. So I guess these are Berhalter. U.S. aims to mirror England's success. What has England won recently? Did I miss something somewhere? Source, Bucks bring back Gio Bernard on a 1-year deal. Also, other big NFL news, the Buccaneers, Bruce Arians is no longer the head coach in Tampa Bay. He has retired, has moved to the front office, and Todd Bowles is now the new head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which is big news. And I'm a fan of Bowles. I don't think he got a fair shake with the New York Jets. He had a terrible general manager while he was there. I think if Joe Douglas had kept him around, or should I say, I think if Joe Douglas was paired with Todd Bowles, like if Todd Bowles had, you know, been able to be a part of this regime, I think things would be better for the Jets. Although I like Salah now, but I mean, Adam Gase was a train wreck. Bowles is a really good coach, really well-respected coach, and I think he deserved another shot, and he's going to get a chance to really succeed this year. See, the Los Angeles Dodgers traded for Craig Kimbrell. I mean, holy crap. Who's going to beat the Dodgers this year? Wow, another LSU player has entered the transfer portal.
I'm not a data wizard, but I am an investor at Invesco QQQ, which gives me access to innovation.
Care about these stupid ads. LSU's Mwani Wilkinson becomes 11th men's basketball player, not football player. I'm like, I think they actually had more people transfer out, but they had a bunch of people transfer in. That program is dead. Murdered. LSU's basketball program might be the new SMU football program. Anyone who doesn't know about what happened to SMU back in the 80s, death penalty. Draft Buzz Notebook, what we're hearing on Thibodeau's drop, Carolina's QB plan more. Ooh, that interests me. Ooh, McShay's got his tier list out. We might check into those later in the show, depending on how quick we get through some of these news bits and then get into my awards. So, some other big news since my show on Tuesday. And sorry I didn't have a show Wednesday. I had a brutal migraine, and I couldn't run it. Pro Bowl linebacker Wagner gets 5-year deal with Rams. That one is worth $50 million up front, or $50 million base. With incentives, could hit $65 million over those 5 years. Seems like a long deal. I kind of feel like, so he was slated to make like $18 million or something this year by the Seahawks, or somewhere in there, or 19. So looking at $10 million a year. Devondrick Campbell just had a huge season, all-pro season. Got a 5-year, $50 million contract with the Packers. Now, he doesn't have the track record of Wagner, but he's younger and really athletic. Wagner's kind of slowing down in his 30s. And some people have looked at that as, well, is this contract front-loaded? How much is he getting guaranteed? I haven't seen any guaranteed numbers. But is this contract more front-loaded with some years on the end, playing next to last year's third-round pick for Los Angeles, Ernest Jones, which they nailed? They nailed that pick. Ernest Jones, I saw a lot of people with fifth-round grades on him. I thought he was better than that. Which I thought people were underrating some of the lesser lights in the class because of the crazy athletes at the top. So, we'll see. Arians happy to reward Bowles. No rift with Brady. Because the rumor there was that, and I think I had talked about this on the show, and maybe had read it on here, that there was apparently Brady and Leftwich were kind of annoyed with Arians because Arians was having to rehab like a torn Achilles that he had suffered, which is hilarious to think about a coach suffering a torn Achilles and rehabbing it. But they would be game planning. You know, they'd get in and they're doing their game planning sessions while, or not like they're trying to do it without him, but you know, there's only so many hours a day, so they've worked on this. And Arians, you know, would start off the day with his rehab, and he'd come in and he'd take red pen to a lot of stuff. That was some reports when Brady retired. So who knows? Lawyer. Oh, so this is that Jerry Jones story with the daughter. I'm not gonna get too crazy, and it's kind of wild. So there's this woman. She's a congressional aide for one of the Republican congressmen here. I think it's like Jackson. Her name is something Davis, and she is alleging, or she has sued Jerry Jones because she is claiming to be his daughter, whom he made an agreement with the mother back in the 90s when she was born, like when she was like less than a year old, that he would pay X amount of money and pay for certain other thing, and has agreed either in principle at the time or later to pay for like tuition. He bought her like a Range Rover for her 16th birthday, paid for this big Sweet 16 party as well. The totals for those two things combined went over $100,000. And her birthday party was on a reality show called Big Rich Texas, which I'd never heard of. But basically, Jones's friend and lawyer Don Jack, I guess, had been the one paying out this money or whatever, because there were two trusts set up, one for the mother, one for the daughter, and the daughter's now 25. I think going to turn 26 this year, but she basically they've been paid out over $3 million or around $3 million over the last 25 years. And the allegation here is that Jack handled all this stuff personally and met with them. And there was a few years ago, and also her entire college tuition at SMU and a year at a big-time private school, high school, were paid for by Jones as well. So there's so this is being litigated because she doesn't want money. This isn't about money. It's about having his name on her birth certificate, so he has to take responsibility for my life or whatever. Well, Mr. Jack and Jones's attorney, who I believe is Willington something. So Jack apparently had a dinner meeting or a dinner thing with the mother and daughter, which I'm going to say this seems like she's Jerry Jones's kid. However, the mother did make some kind of agreement to keep this off the record as long as they got what they wanted. And a few $1 million, that was her choice. Now, you could say, well, the daughter didn't have any say in that, and that's true. But upon turning 18, she could have done whatever, except Jerry Jones was paying her college tuition. Maybe she didn't want to jeopardize that, whatever. I know I don't have it pulled up because I've read a bunch of this stuff, and I'm just trying to quickly go over this. So Jack says they had a dinner meeting where the daughter had drafted a letter that she wanted delivered to Jerry Jones, stating that the financial stuff that has been done so far is not or was not enough and not satisfactory, and that if he wanted this to continue to be confidential, he needed to pay them $20 million. That's the claim by this lawyer who has handled the payments, which Jerry Jones in this regard, because here's the thing, yeah, she says it's not about money, but if she gets it to where he's her father and her name or his name's on her birth certificate, Jerry may have everything set up, for when he passes, and she then becomes someone who can screw with that process. Now, you can talk about the morality of all this all you want, because obviously, hey, maybe don't cheat on your wife, and this doesn't happen, but at the same time, it's like, this seems like a money grab and extortion. So I don't know. This is just wild. This is the kind of stuff where I'm just like, I mean, I don't care how it goes, Jerry has to line the bet he's made, but it just seems like everybody involved in this is just kind of crappy. So, let's see. Falcons signed wide receiver Demir Bird to a 1-year contract. They still have the worst receiver room in the league. I mean, that gives them some big-time speed, but Bills Bucks on top as Sportsbook's 2022 win odds. So they think that the Bills and Bucks are the favorites for the 1 seeds. Star corner Patrick Peterson is re-signing with the Vikings. And Malcolm Jenkins is retiring after a 13-year career. Okay. Let's see. UEFA playoff, November 21st. England 25th. Iran the 29th. What? Oh, whoever wins the UEFA playoff, I guess. Okay. I hate the fact that the World Cup is in November. And, especially in America, I mean, like, you're going up against college football and the NFL and the start of the NBA and NHL seasons. Like, I mean, for soccer fans, it's not going to matter, but for other people, like, or someone like me, sorry, if there are college football games on, I'm watching that over soccer. The United States has been drawn into Group B against England, Iran, and the winner of the last remaining European playoff, which is between... That is way too long to put that... well, wait. Who are the two teams in that playoff? And then Mexico will face Argentina. Let's see. The last team, the U.S. men's national team's group, will be decided in June as either Scotland or Ukraine will face Wales for the final spot. I'm going to be completely honest. That is a really favorable group for the U.S. to advance out of. Of course, we can't even dominate a weak CONCACAF, so what am I saying? Mexico is in Group C with Argentina, Poland, and Saudi Arabia. Canada made it? That's kind of surprising. Did only 3 CONCACAF teams make it? Because if so, man. We'll face... Canada's going to be with Belgium, Morocco, and Croatia. Ooh, that's not a good draw for Canada. So, let's see. What are the other groups? The U.S. qualifies from its group. If it qualifies from group play, it'll then play either the winner or runner-up from Group A, which is Qatar, Senegal, Ecuador, and the Netherlands. You know, one thing that I've noticed because I want to say we've expanded the World Cup as well. I'm noticing a lot more teams from the Middle East making it. A lot of these oil countries around the Persian Gulf. Wow, Qatar, Senegal, Ecuador, and the Netherlands? I mean, unless Senegal and Ecuador and Qatar are better than I think, like, geez, Netherlands got an easy group. But if the groups have expanded, by the way, that kind of makes sense that the groups would be weaker. Yeah, we qualified despite a 2-0 defeat to Costa Rica. Overall, pleased with the group and excited to get started. Yeah. I'm not. The U.S. and England have a history at World Cups and will meet again on Black Friday. So that game's going to be on Black Friday. In 1950, the U.S. delivered one of the biggest upsets in World Cup history when it stunned the heavily favored England 1-0 on a goal by Joe Gaetjens. The pair met again at the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, playing to a 1-1 draw, with Clint Dempsey scoring the equalizer for the U.S. after Steven Gerrard's opener. That was a really tense match, too. The U.S. and Iran have squared off once previously at the 1998 World Cup, with Iran claiming a memorable 2-1 win that had the effect of eliminating the U.S. from the tournament. Yeah, that was and that signaled another time where the U.S. was, okay, full rebuild mode. I'm trying to see, like, all of these groups. Okay. There is no easy group in a World Cup. Mexican Football Federation President Yon de Luisa said. Let's see. I mean, Poland's not an easy team. Argentina's not an easy team. And out of all those kind of, Middle Eastern countries, Saudi Arabia's actually got a pretty, underrated, one, they've got a pretty nice or pretty decent league there. And their players the player level there has really improved, in country. So, okay, so these are the groups. Group A, you got Qatar, Ecuador, Senegal, and the Netherlands, which their rankings here: Qatar 51, Ecuador 46, Senegal 20, Netherlands 10. So Senegal has a pretty formidable team right now. In Group B, you've got England, ranked 5th in the world. Iran is 21st, which Iran not slouches at all. We are somehow 15th, and well, I don't know what those other teams are ranked. So this, we've got a tough group. Because I was just sitting here Scotland, Iran, but I kind of forget. Iran's actually pretty good. And Scotland, Wales, Ukraine all have solid histories. Argentina's 4. Saudi Arabia is actually 49th right now. So they're lower than I kind of expected there. Mexico is 9th, and Poland is 26th. That's lower than I would have expected from Poland, too, considering they've got Lewandowski up top. But, I mean, maybe they just don't have that much talent. But, I've seen a bunch of young, France, 3rd in the world. They're leading Group D. They've got to wait for winners between Peru, Australia, and the United Arab Emirates. Denmark, who's 11th, and Tunisia, who's 35th. Huh. Denmark's team is, I mean, not a ton of star power, but well coached. They know their identity and how to play together. Spain's leading Group E. Germany and Japan. And then they've got the winner between New Zealand and Costa Rica. Dude, if Costa Rica wins that's going to be a tough group. Jeez. Group F, you got Belgium, Canada, Morocco, Croatia, like I said earlier. Morocco 24th. Morocco's solid. They've put out a number of pretty decent level players in recent years. Croatia, 16 seems a little low for Croatia, but Croatia usually plays really well come tournament time. Brazil, Group G, they're ranked 1 in the world. Got Serbia 25th, Switzerland 14, Cameroon 37. Interesting to see Senegal rated so much higher than Cameroon right now. Then you've got Portugal, Ghana, Uruguay, South Korea for Group H. Ghana's really low, compared to usual. Ranked 60th. Uruguay 13th. South Korea 29th. Would not have guessed that South Korea would have, or Saudi Arabia, or a few of these other teams would have been rated ahead of Ghana. So I guess we haven't expanded the World Cup yet. Because we're still at 32. Because they were talking about expanding it to 48, but maybe that's going to be for the next one. But anyway, so that's your World Cup. Okay. Let's see, ESPN Plus. Okay, so this is McShay's draft tier rankings. We're going to blow through this. No prospects in Tier 1 of 95 or higher, which is kind of crazy to me because I would argue that I would argue Evan Neal, Ike Makwonu. people could talk about traits all they want, but I would put Aiden Hutchinson in that place because I just think he's like the Bosa brothers. I think he's an absolute like lock to be a stud. And I'd probably throw at this point. I'd also probably throw Sauce Gardner up there, like. But I don't know. Might be a stretch for Gardner. So no tier 1. So tier 2, these are guys 92 to 94. They've got 9 guys in that range. Yeah, I'm not shocked to see those are the 9 guys. Although I'd probably... I just think London's going to be boom or bust. Tier 3 has 14 prospects. That's your 90-91 guys. And, I mean, this is where the real depth of this draft is. I mean, the fact that you've got 14 players just between 90-91, like these guys... And even some of these guys, like, at the bottom here, like 92, are likely going to go behind some of these guys, potentially. I don't know, because personally, all these guys that are up here with these ratings, I have in the top 10, except for Drake London. But that's just because of how I think the board's going to... Well, I don't have London in my top 10 prospects, but I also don't think he's going to go in the top 10 if the draft goes the way I think it does. But that just depends. Let's see. Any shocks so far? See, I have Charles Cross up, like, the 92-94 range. Like, I have him as... Well, I'm translating because my grading scale's not... I don't do the 100 grading scale. Or, like, I don't do the Scouts Inc. grading scale. I have Charles Cross, in my top 10. Well, actually, Charles Cross is like my 5th rated prospect, so. Let's see. And I'll just say this. I've also got Devontae Wyatt higher than they do. And before the ACL injury, we all had Jameson Williams in our, like, top 6-7 players. Let's see. Daxton Hill's moving up for them. Let's see. Then they've got 22 prospects in Tier 4. Let's see. It also says at the end, like, how many players were in the tier last year. See, last year, 15 players in this tier, or in the 90-91 tier. There were 9 players in Tier 2 last year. Of course, there was 1 player, Trevor Lawrence, in Tier 1 last year. So Tier 1 there's usually not like a ton of guys in Tier 1. So the first 2 groups have been kind of in line, or these first 3 groups have been kind of in line with recent drafts, which is not a shock to me. Let's see. Karlaftis, Penning, Treylon Burks. I've got a higher grade on Burks. Kenyon Green, Jahan Dotson, Andrew Booth Jr., David Ojabo. Ojabo was higher than this before his injury, and I have not dropped Jameson Williams or David Ojabo's grades just because of these injuries. So that's a big shift as well there. And then I have Zion Johnson much higher because I have 91. Let's see, Travis Jones, defensive tackle out Connecticut here. They've got Logan Hall too high, in my opinion. Let's see, Jalen Peters, Sky Moore, Bernard Raymond, Kenneth Walker the third, and Christian Watson. Man, Watson's climbing. He's gotten to 45. Where's Breece Hall? You've got Walker ahead of Breece Hall. I don't think I'm willing to go there. So 21 prospects in tier 5, 17 players in that range last year. Once again, we're seeing like through here this kind of depth starting to win out. Also have Kier Elam rated higher than that. Leo Chanel's blasting up the board. Fedarian Mathis, Fedarian Mathis is interesting. A lot of people have Mathis all over the place, which here's the other thing. They have 66 players with mid to late second round grades or higher in this class. Which kind of like I've been feeling the late first through the early third is going to be interesting. Of course, I have Sam Howell graded higher than pretty much everyone, so which is probably going to end up biting me in the butt, but sometimes you've got to stand on your guys. I also have Louis Cine. I have him higher than Jalen Peter. I do not have Nick Cross this high. His workout was great. His tape is not a top. In my opinion, Nick Cross is a late third round guy at best. And that doesn't mean he can't be successful. I'm not throwing him up there with these guys. I think Abraham Lucas could still sneak in, or could have snuck into the first round before some trades were made. And he might still. I think some teams are really going to like Lucas. But I think he's going to go in the top 50. Nick Bedino. I'm trying to see some surprises. I'm honestly a little shocked with some of the stuff I've heard from people I really respect that Pickens isn't higher for Scouts Inc. Some people, Kuiper's thrown Tyler Smith into the first round discussion. He's got a much higher grade on Smith than 58th overall. And there was buzz about Trey McBride being a first round tight end. And this is what I've seen happen pretty much every year for several years. You hear people talk about the tight ends and like talented tight ends, and then by the time the draft comes around, everybody's like, yeah, they're like a mid to late second round guy. And I do think it has to do with positional value. And sometimes how scattershot hitting on tight ends has been of late, or developing them. But this tight end class is so deep, is another factor in that too. Daniel Falele, Drake Jackson, DeMarvin Leal still got a second round grade here. John Mechie, D'Angelo Malone of Western Kentucky, Chad Muma, and Jaquan Brisker. I don't have Malone that high. I don't have Leal that high anymore. I think Drake Jackson's fine. I don't love him as much as some other people. But still, this is this is solid. Like, only a few of these guys are really kind of off it, or off the reservation to me. So all these guys are third round grades. He had 50 players in this tier last year, only 40 this year. That's kind of interesting to me that he's only got 40 in here, because I think I'm going to suspect that below this he's got some guys that have graded higher. Let's see, Damone Clark, Dylan Parham. Not shocked to see them leading off this group. Kirby Joseph, higher than I've got him too, because I have him day 3. Troy Anderson, and see, I have a higher grade on them than Troy Anderson. Cam Thomas. Cam Thomas has gone from Cole Strange, Greg Dulcich, Calvin Austin the third. My thing is, if you had Tutu Altwell graded higher than Calvin Austin, that's weird to me. Kobe Bryant out of Cincinnati. Let's see. I'm not as high on Pettit Frere. Jalen Tolbert here. Velus Jones Jr. Mari Barno. JT Woods. Woods had a great combine, but I'm not willing to throw him in my top 100 necessarily. James Cook out of Georgia, who I have a higher rating on. Isaiah Likely. Khalil Shakir. Zion McCollum is way too low. If anything, I'd argue that McCollum might deserve, or his physical traits are really great. They're not as elite as Tariq Woolen, but I mean, this guy has awesome measurables, and he dominated his level of competition. See Cameron Jurgens here. JoJo Demand of Nebraska. I do not have Demand near this high. Sean Ryan's a third day guy or a day 3 guy for me. Ingabari Kingsley from South Carolina down here. Luke Godeke of Central Michigan. This is a guy, I love Godeke in this range. Brandon Smith of Penn State. You've got Kellen Deesh of Arizona State. I could see him going higher than people think. I like seeing Dijon Dixon here. I think this is really good range for him. Josh Jobe. You got Marcus Jones here. Marcus Jones, really good return man, as well as corner, has played some receiver too. Donovan West. Jelani Woods of Virginia. You got Brian Cook in here. Luke Fortner of Kentucky, who I have ahead of Donovan West. And Brian Asamoah. I don't have Asamoah that high. And then he doesn't show any of his, further tier or whatever. But there's some guys that aren't in there that I have higher. Because I have Kyle Phillips. I have Kyle Phillips with a 3rd round grade. For one. Let's see. More draft stuff. This is buzz stuff. I might just read this on my own time and maybe talk about it next week. I don't know. We'll see. Oh, is this... Oh, it's this thing again. I'm sure this hasn't shifted at all. No. Everybody's got Howell 5th, and they're all wrong. I hope. Let's see here. And notice, only 3 running backs showed up during that whole thing. Isaiah Spiller apparently has fallen way down for the Scouts Inc. guys. Okay. With that being said, we're going to get into some free agency awards, winners and losers, if you will. Wow, that took way too long to get to. I'm already 45 minutes into the show. Oh, gosh darn it. Okay. So, that being said, I use that term a ton. I need to find some other way to vamp time or whatever, or transition. NFL awards and superlatives. So, we're going to start with the team that I think has won, or the teams that I think have had the best off seasons. That have really improved their teams, in my opinion, with their offseason moves. and gotten good value. One, I think, is the Chargers. The Khalil Mack trade was a home run trade as far as I'm concerned. You signed Sebastian Joseph Day, Austin Johnson on the interior. The J.C. Jackson signing is great for your secondary. And I think re-signing Mike Jones. Mike Williams was smart. And considering the receiver market now, I think you're looking at a 3-year, $20 million a year deal, whatever. Which all the guarantee money is basically in the first 2 years. I think you're looking at that deal and you're like, that's actually looks really good now. With some of the deals that have been signed. I mean, the Christian Kirk contract, between the Christian Kirk contract, the trades for Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill, where they then paid them $28.5 million a year and $30 million a year on their extensions. I think it's really good money. And considering the year Mike Williams was coming off of, you look at Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson's had a really down year this year. And he got 3 years, $15 million a year. 3 years, $45. And you look at some of the other receivers some of these young receivers that are extension eligible going into the last years of their rookie deals. Some of these guys who were like second rounders in the last few, or in 2019. A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel, DK Metcalf. And I think there was another one that year that popped off that I'm blanking on. But number of young, talented receivers coming up for big deals going into the offseason. So that Mike Williams contract looks good now. And he's got a rapport. Uh-oh. I haven't been paying attention. My chat's been going in and out. That means my stream's probably been going in and out. That's great. Anyway, you know what? Pardon me for a second while I use my phone. Our internet may or not be screwy today. Sorry. I just need to check the stream. It's going. So, see, this is what happens when I'm up reading stuff and I don't. I need to get I need to get a second monitor. Because right now I'm just using my TV that I use for everything. Eventually, the hope is to have like a second monitor where I can have my stream stuff up. But I'd have to rejigger everything, because I would probably, I don't even know what I'd do with my setup. I have thought about potentially doing going audio only for a while. I don't know. We'll see. Because I like streaming. I like the idea of being able to interact, live with people. Have conversations. So anyway, Chargers are number one. I thought the Mike Williams deal was good. I think they made themselves really formidable. Number two, and I know some people are going to be like, but, all these other teams, like the Broncos just traded for Russell Wilson. How are they not the big winner? Well, I think they are big winners. They're number 2 for me because they finally got their quarterback. Thing is, the Chargers already had their quarterback, had, in my opinion, a playoff caliber team last year that their first-year head coach kind of bungled a couple situations that ended up, and one of them literally was him choosing, no, we're not going. That man gave the Raiders a win. If the game would have tied, and they would have tied, and they both would have made the playoffs. The Steelers wouldn't have in this scenario if they had tied. If I'm remembering this correctly, and I believe that I am, if they had tied, both the Raiders and Chargers go to the playoffs. Instead, he calls a timeout and basically allows the Raiders to win the game. Dumbfounded. But anyway, Chargers were a playoff team with a young quarterback on their rookie deal, which is the best bargain, best team building asset in sports. Not just, like a solid rookie quarterback. They got an elite one. So, yeah, they're doing their best to maximize this window. And they're not spending they're not going overboard either, in my opinion. The J.C. Jackson contract, solid to me. Because, it's basically right at what the cap on the cornerback market has been. I thought Sebastian Joseph Day, out of all the defensive tackles that were signed, he had arguably the best value deal based on his production level and the fit for what they need. Austin Johnson, a little pricier per year than I expected, but Johnson still has some upside and looked better with the Giants than he did with the Titans. It did look like he had taken a little bit of a step forward. He's got a little more penetrator to him. But we'll see. But when you put Johnson on a defensive line where you've got Joseph Day, Bosa, Mack around him, that's going to elevate him. And hopefully will elevate former, former high pick Jerry Tillery, who, it's year 3 and we're still like, where are you? Because if he had popped, they wouldn't be needing to go after interior guys. Or necessarily. That wouldn't have been as big a need. So I just think, they're maximizing this window with a underpaid quarterback. The Broncos went out and they traded for Wilson, and Wilson's being paid below market right now. I don't think they've agreed on an extension or anything yet. I'm sure that's in the works, but this team has a solid offensive line. Could be improved, but it's solid. It's way better than what the Seahawks had. Yeah, they traded away Noah Fant. I didn't love losing Noah Fant because you'd think him with Wilson, whatever. But Albert O, I can't pronounce his last name right now, not without looking at it. Is a solid, tight end, had massive upside. This guy had one of the most productive seasons a tight end has ever had during his college career at Missouri. Unfortunately, he and Drew Lock were never able to connect in that way in the NFL. I'm going to blame that on Lock. They didn't give up any of their receivers. And that receiving core is really stinking good. So that's what that sound has been. Me disconnecting and reconnecting. There's something up with my internet, and I need to check my PC, I guess, in the future. This is weird. So, second winner is the Broncos, though. They've got some more work to do addressing they still need they need to re-sign Alexander Johnson. Just go ahead and do that. But they still would need to draft, I think, a kind of speedier linebacker as well. Even with Josie Jewell back, because like Jewell and Johnson aren't the most elite athletes at the position, and they need to work on their defensive line, like the interior line. Because, oh wait, well they did sign DJ Jones, but I think they could still use another guy in there. Oh, And the Randy Gregory signing, is it risky? Sure, but you pair him with Bradley Chubb, that's a really nice one too. In the pass rush, and they could probably use some corner depth as well, because their secondary, they're losing a number of like veteran guys, but they've drafted some young guys like Caden Stearns. And Jamar Johnson, they really believe can step up next to Jonathan Simmons. So safety, I don't really think is necessarily a need. But corner. So. And notice, my first two big winners are both AFC West teams. After that, I'm going with the Bills, because Von Miller is the impact pass rusher that team really needs right now. Hopefully. He looked really good with the Rams. He looks like he's still got, like he still has it. I like the moves they made on the interior defensive line. They've still got to improve secondary. I think their first round pick should be on a corner. Or at least one of their first two picks need to be on a corner, but they have arguably the best safety tandem in the NFL. They've got a great pair of top two linebackers. They could probably use some depth there. I like bringing Roger Saffold in at guard. Offensive line's another position where I think they could look to maybe address. Like interior line. And obviously receiver. Because Josh Allen's about to, with his extension, going to be at the top of the market. You might not be able to afford Stephon Diggs' next contract. Maybe you use that first round pick and get Jahan Dotson, who, for me, a lot of similarities to Stephon Diggs in their game. I think they're going to dip into the receiver waters for sure. I also really like the Jamison Crowder pickup for them. Of course, they have Gabriel Davis, who they think the world of, but and I think they need to address running back. I like the Duke Johnson signing. And I borderline just think he's straight up better than Devin Singletary and Zach Moss, but they still need a more dynamic running back. Like Kenneth Walker would be nice. I don't think they're going to draft one that early, but further down the board, getting like someone who could be a home run hitter, like a Ty Chandler or a Pierre Strong, would be a really nice, or a Isaiah Pacheco, would be a really nice change to their running back room, because Moss and Singletary are both slow. They don't have any top end speed. Moss is slow. Singletary's like, he's got quickness, but he doesn't have breakaway speed. Like Moss is just slow. But I think the Bills are third. The Von Miller move was just really smart business, like really good business. Yeah, they've drafted a bunch of edge guys. Miller's different than those edge guys. And he gives them a really great veteran mentor. They had Jerry Hughes. Maybe they could get him back on some kind of like cheapo deal. But I'm definitely a big fan of the Miller move. And they didn't lose. Another big thing, they didn't lose much. And I forgot, O.J. Howard. I thought O.J. Howard was a really nice one-year upside signing. And I think they might have signed a linebacker that I'm forgetting the name of, too. Anyway, moving on beyond the Bills. The Bengals are number 4. And I kind of had, some qualms flipping between the Bengals and the Bills. I just really thought the Von Miller signing was a big impact move by the Bills to what I thought was maybe their biggest limit or shortcoming as a team. And then Saffold should help their run game, which is their biggest on the offensive side. The Bengals just knocked the offensive line out of the park. And maybe I should have them third over the Bills. But, it's really close. This was a Super Bowl team that probably wins that game if their offensive line wasn't 3/5 paper mache. Let's just be real. Leo Collins at right tackle, great move. That's going to help their run game and their pass game. Jonah Williams still starting at left tackle. And you're probably hoping, okay, year 4. Of course, he missed his entire rookie year, but year 4, we're going to figure out whether you're the guy or not. Dadgummit, I'm going to have to get to the bottom of these internet issues. We're probably not going to get to the college football stuff. I'm probably just going to do the superlatives today. And I might even cut that short and save that for Monday if these connection issues are going to persist, because this is rather infuriating. So, Alex Kappa started for the Bucs the last, at least the last 2 years, but starting guard on a Super Bowl winning team. Starting guard on a really good offense last year. That's an upgrade because their right guard this year, whoever was there, was terrible. And then getting Ted Karras at center on a really good deal. I think it was 3 years, $18 million. That's a really solid deal. And I like the value on that way better than Kappa, because I don't necessarily think Kappa's that much better than Karras. So, and they could still draft offensive line, and should still draft offensive line in this draft. And they still have another one of their other rookies from, I think it was last year, Isaiah Prince, who played a lot last year. I think he was their starting right tackle. They still have him to develop. He's been through fire. Maybe that sets him on a path where you scale him back. It's like, okay, you know what you're up against now. Here's what you need to do to get better. That would be the hope there. But they could still very well draft or go offensive line at any point and at multiple points in this draft. Because, still not convinced that Jonah Williams is the guy yet. Beyond the offensive line spending, I thought re-signing Hill was a really smart move. Good value in the market, in line with a bunch of the other contracts. And I think he's a more dynamic player than some of the other guys that were getting that money. And franchising Jesse Bates, you're not losing anything major off of this defense. I think corner is a position they need to address in the draft. Still, you got Eli Apple back at basically the veterans minimum. You still need better than Eli Apple. Their linebacker group's really good because of drafting. Really now, the two biggest needs are, to me, tight end and corner. And you can do whatever to build depth wherever you want, or just draft the best players available. And then my fifth big winner in free agency. And to be fair, there are a lot of teams that did well and improved, like that I liked what they did. These are teams that I think did the most good for themselves. And I'm not going to include the Browns here because the Watson situation is a headache. And while I've probably come across on the channel as someone who is pro Watson, it's not that I'm pro Watson. That's not it. I'm pro justice, and this process right now is not about justice. Not to mention, I don't think I've mentioned on the show yet. I can't remember if I did this Tuesday or not, but I think we know kind of why there wasn't a criminal case until after the civil suits were filed and why those got thrown out. I have a feeling, and some other people have also voiced this already, there's a big thing on Instagram, social media and stuff of massage therapists that aren't really massage therapists. And I kind of have a feeling that Watson was going and using these massage therapists for the real reason they're advertising, which is not necessarily the massage therapy. And it just so happens that he one time might have gotten someone who was an actual legitimate massage therapist. And now all these other women are using this as a chance at a second cash grab. Just a theory. Just a theory based on internet trends. And the fact that criminal cases were thrown out. And why most of these women have not been willing to file a criminal case. Because then the truth would come out. There's another reason why, since the very beginning of this, the civil stuff, there's a reason Watson's camp's been really quiet as well. And I think it's for this reason. One, Watson should be conscious about his self-image. Because to me, like, this whole thing, I'm like, you don't get in this situation without making a bunch of stupid decisions. And Watson, and if you saw the deposition tape, well, the pieces of his depositions that have been released publicly, they don't paint him that great either. I don't think they paint him as a sexual assaulter or anything. I think they do paint him as a guy who can't keep his horniness in check. So, sorry for using that kind of language, but I mean, like, that's just it. He can't keep him. He's got some issues there. And this is what happens when children get money and influence. Because to me, this Deshaun Watson, you are man-child. Grow up. So the Browns aren't winning. Plus, I mean, that was a lot of draft compensation to give up for Watson. Historic levels, not seen since the Herschel Walker trade. And let it be known that the Herschel Walker trade was the steal, the biggest steal in NFL history, arguably, when it comes to trades. Jimmy Johnson stole so much stuff from the Vikings because of that, or because of that trade. And I thought about putting the Texans on here because of just that haul they got for a toxic asset. But I'm not, because we don't know how they've used those picks yet. Same thing with Seattle. Like, I think they got really good value for Wilson. But once again, we don't know what they've done with what they're going to do with those picks yet. So, my number 5 team, I'm going with the Rams, the defending Super Bowl champs. They lost some pieces. They lost Joseph Day. They've got guys in house already to replace him. They traded Austin Corbett to the Panthers? You know, a guy that they rehabbed and started for them. I like the Brian Allen signing, 3 years, $8 million a year. You know, solid move for a solid starter. The Joseph Noteboom contract, a lot of people are like, yeah, but he was a swing tackle. They know Noteboom better than anyone else. And I think if they're willing to give that kind of money, and there's some incentives in there, they've done such a good job of developing the guys that they drafted. I'm going to trust the Rams until they give me reason not to. Yeah, they trade away Robert Woods. That ACL's a big injury. Allen Robinson, I think, gives them a little... even though he's... Well, I mean, they're about the same age. Robinson's not as old as you think. He's not even... I mean, he's 29. And he's not coming off the severe ACL injury. Robinson gives them a little more upside. He's a little more physical receiver. They have a guy in Van Jefferson who I think kind of profiles as... He profiles so much like Robert Woods, it's not funny. They want to bring Odell Beckham Jr. back, and Odell Beckham Jr. is a... I mean, when he got to L.A., he became Odell again. He became OBJ again. Dynamic, playmaking receiver. Yeah, he tore his ACL in the Super Bowl. He'll be back at some point next year if they bring him back. When he's healthy. I mean, but a lot of those guys, they're not fully healthy till a year later. So, I mean, that was really unfortunate. But he still could be something for them at some point next season. Especially if he attacks that rehab. Which, with his mentality and his competitiveness, and people can say whatever they want, the dude's a competitor. He cares. He really does. The Rams gave him a shot. Gave him a role that he ran with. They won a Super Bowl. It's like he wants another shot at a championship. I'm going to bet that. So, I think he's going to work his butt off. And they drafted Tutu Atwell last year. Like, they have receiving talent. The Robert Woods trade, you could say they didn't get a whole lot of value. I mean, for a guy coming off of an ACL injury who's not... I mean, he's really good. I think he's really, really good. I'm glad to have him in Tennessee. But a guy who really profiles as like a second option and a great one coming off an injury, and you were able to get Allen Robinson. You've drafted guys. I think they're fine there. And the Bobby Wagner signing, because I didn't have them in the top 5. The Bobby Wagner signing puts them into the top 5 because they now have a really great linebacker duo. They have the experience and intelligence of Bobby Wagner next to Ernest Jones, who they drafted last year, who really outperformed his draft stock and some of people's draft grades on him. They've got a great starting linebacker duo now. to go behind their defensive front. And they've just done such a good job of developing their secondary guys who weren't necessarily like the highest draft picks or even drafted at corner. I just think making sure you have a solid offensive line, the Robinson move, the Wagner signing, I think you're a winner just because you didn't lose a ton. So some other people might want to throw the Chiefs out there for their haul for Tyreek Hill. Some people might want to throw the Dolphins out there for getting Tyreek Hill, Teron Armstead. I almost threw them on my top 5. The Wagner signing did it for me with the Rams, but that one was close. It came down to the Dolphins and the Rams for me. But the reason with the Dolphins, I'm sitting here like, yeah, you traded for Tyreek Hill, but you just spent a first and a second and more. Like, you spent like 5 draft picks on a guy that you're now having to pay a big $30 million a year extension when you kind of already have that guy on the roster in Jalen Waddle anyway. And you could have just drafted another wide receiver or multiple wide receivers in a loaded wide receiver draft. But I did like the Dolphins offseason. And a couple other teams to mention. The Packers as well, and Raiders. I think the Raiders almost made it as well, but once again, you're trading a first and a second for a like 30-year-old receiver who is the best receiver in the league. And I actually like the value on that one better than the Tyreek Hill one. Hill's younger, but I think Adams is just a better receiver, and they didn't trade as many picks. And I thought about the Packers because of getting like 2 first-round picks for Adams. Those 2 picks for Adams, and I thought re-signing Devondrick Campbell was big. Extending Preston Smith was big. And restructuring that contract. Keeping Aaron Rodgers was huge. So you could argue for the Packers as well. But I just thought both Super Bowl teams did a really good job of not losing too much and adding to their team. Like, to me, they're better today than they were entering the offseason, in my opinion. So the Packers were close. And the Raiders were close. Because I thought trading Ngakoue for Rock Ya-Sin and then signing Chandler Jones, I don't necessarily think the Ngakoue for Rock Ya-Sin trade was necessarily equal player value, but they needed corner help. And they were bringing in Chandler Jones to go along with Max Crosby. Like, the West is just ridiculous what's going on over there. But once again, with the Packers and the Chiefs, I like the value they got back for their players. The issue is I don't know what the picks are yet. So with that, we're going to go, because we'll get into some funny stuff here in a minute. We're going to run through the losers real quick. The Jaguars are in a league of their own. They started off so well. I thought the Scherf and Luakun signings were really, really good. The Fatukasi signing was fine because they were the team that signed Fatukasi because they needed improvement on the middle of their line. I just don't know if he's a $10 million a year guy. Like, I like Sheldon Joseph-Day better, and he was cheaper. I like Bilal Nichols better, and he was cheaper. But Nichols and Fatukasi aren't the same player. So there's that. But Fatukasi's not as good as DJ Jones. And they got literally the same deal. And Fatukasi's kind of, and you can give me all the different reasons why, and I know them, but he's been worse every year. So we'll get there. He was having to learn a new scheme last year, so there's that. But then Christian Kirk and Zay Jones, like, ooh, yuck, eh. Like, I'm just not a fan there of those two contracts. Like the Christian Kirk deal in particular was the worst contract in free agency. So you're going to get my number one spot. And I'd argue this on Oluokun. That guy's he was really good in Atlanta. He's still season. Gosh darn it. One good season? Nah. I don't know if I love it. Or I say I know I don't love it. Actually, wait a second. I might have my numbers wrong. No, I'm right. I'm right about the 13. So, I mean, I wasn't going to be shocked if he ended up like around 10, but you cut Miles Jack, and Miles Jack's now in Pittsburgh. And I'll be honest, Pittsburgh has had a sneaky good offseason with some of the value stuff they've been able to do. They now have Miles Jack next to Deion Bush. That's a really athletic, rangy combo of linebackers who are both three-down guys. So, and franchise tagging Cam Robinson again. Cam Robinson was one of that sneeze took an eternity. Anyway, Cam Robinson's he wasn't worth the first franchise tag. Then he has arguably a worse season, and you re-franchise tag him again? Trent Baalke is one of the most frustratingly moronic general managers because he'll have these really big home run swing draft picks and really good moves, but he couples them with equally retarded free agent contracts and blown picks like A.J. Jenkins, who was a former first-round pick when he was in San Francisco. You probably don't know who he is. Neither does 95% of the NFL's fan base. Anyway, Trent Baalke started so well and just... That Kirk contract is just atrocious, in my opinion. I don't even care if it's really just a 2-year deal. It's too expensive even for that. Then you signed Zay Jones to a 3-year, $8 million a year contract, with the first 2 years basically guaranteed. And you let DJ Chark walk to Detroit on a 1-year prove-it deal that is worth up to $12 million for that year. And he's better than Kirk and Jones combined. I don't care about the health. I don't. Chark's upside's worth it. He has the tools to be a number 1. And an elite number 2. So, I'm just confused at why, you paid so much. You're paying this year combined 26. Well, and that's not even including the upfront guaranteed money, really, that you're paying for Kirk and Jones. But just based on the way the contracts look to be structured, you're paying $26.5 million for a number 2 and a number 3 receiver. What are you doing? So Jaguars, I wanted to balance this out. I didn't want to put them as the big losers. But, seriously, I just couldn't overlook that. The second team that I'm gonna place here is gonna be the Chicago Bears. They got what they could for Khalil Mack. You know, they're rebuilding, but to me, you undersold. Second and sixth round picks. I mean, that second round pick is a good one that you got. Or wait, no. I mean, it's a solid one. It's the middle of the round. Sorry, I was mixing up. The Bears are the ones getting the second round pick, not the Chargers. Duh. But you let James Daniels walk, who signed a really, really good contract with the Steelers, in my opinion, for a guy who is he's only 24 right now. And he's already got 4 years of experience in the NFL. Like, I think he'll turn 25 during the season, but that's still... He was one of the youngest players to ever enter the league. And you didn't really replace him. You didn't get in. Like, you needed offensive line as bad as anyone. You needed offensive line as bad as the Bengals. You didn't get in on any of these moves for a very affordable Ted Karras. You didn't get involved on Lael Collins. You didn't get involved on Teron Armstead. Instead, you opened up free agency by going out and getting Larry Ogunjobi on a deal that I think was a little pricey. Only for that deal to fall through because he failed his physical. And then everybody's already signed everybody by the time this happened. I mean, Lael Collins was still out there. Teron Armstead was still out there when this happened. But all the defensive tackles were gone for the most part. Or the ones on kind of that level. And sure, sometimes it's bad luck, but you didn't think it was possible that a guy who got injured during the playoffs might fail your physical? And if so, one, that's also a red flag. Because, like, you knew the guy was hurt and he still failed your physical? To me, it seems like buyer's remorse already, and you just would rather have the money back. So I just think the Bears mismanaged their free agency. They also let Bilal Nichols go to the Raiders, who, to me, one of the more reasonable contracts signed in free agency. And you don't have anyone to replace him with either. Because I guess Ogunjobi was going to upgrade on him. Not now. You could argue they're the biggest losers, really. But at least they didn't spend that money on Christian Kirk. And here's another thing to put with the Jaguars with even the Scherf signing. Look at what happened with Andrew Norrell. That was a no-brainer signing that ended up... Scherf is older than Norwell was when Norwell signed that deal. And while I think Scherf's a better player, we'll see. The Jaguars tend to not get the return on their investment. I know it's a new regime, whatever, but this is also Trent Balk. And remember that he also presided over the destruction of the 49ers that he and Jim Harbaugh had built. So, once again, there's that. And then for my third loser, I'm going to go with Carolina Panthers because they just cut Morgan Fox as a cap casualty, yeet by to a really good, solid player. They signed another cap casualty of the Raiders, Corey Littleton, which, solid move. You need more linebackers. Maybe he'll fit better in your scheme. But you didn't address your offensive line that much, except for, you brought in Austin Corbett. But your left tackle position is trash. Your quarterback, you lost out on the big quarterbacks. Your quarterback position is trash because you mismanaged that whole situation with your offensive coordinator by, not investing in the offensive line. You could have had Rashawn Slater. Instead, you drafted J.C. Horn, and that was fine. Horn's a great player. I have no issue with Horn. I have an issue with you fired Joe Brady, your offensive coordinator. You blamed him for the failures of your front office. Then you went out and explored maybe trading for Stephon Diggs. You have DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson under contract. You just drafted Terrace Marshall. Wide receiver is not an issue. I thought the Matt Rule signing was a little out of the box. I thought it was a good signing or a really good move at the head coaching position when they made that hire. Now I'm sitting here and I'm hearing people talk about, the GM and the head coach or potentially, this is a consequential year. I'm like, I'd still say, for Matt Rule, I'm like, well, what was he supposed to do with what he's been given from the front office? He can't just, you can't just magic good elite quarterback play out of Teddy Bridgewater and Sam Darnold and broken down Cam Newton. At the same time, it seems rich to me that you fired your young offensive coordinator hire from the previous season when he hasn't been given... the first year, the offense looked really good considering you had Teddy Bridgewater at the helm. Last year, Christian McCaffrey got hurt. And I think he might have got hurt both of the last 2 years, but McCaffrey got hurt. So what are you doing there? If your top offensive weapons down, that's going to hurt your offense too. The offensive line and quarterback are the most important parts of your team. If you don't have a good QB, you better at least keep him upright, or else it's really going to be bad. If you have a bad offensive line, you at least ought to have a really good quarterback, or else things aren't going to go well. If you have both of those things are bad, the fact that they're only drafting 6th is kind of incredible to me. But it shows how good their defense started off the year last year. And then it cratered too, which, that's kind of supposed to be Matt Rule's thing, I think. So I'll say this. I think the Panthers are losers because I look at what they've done. I'm just like, who cares? Pretty much all their moves, it's like, meh. You made meh moves. And then I don't trust them to make the right pick in the draft. I don't trust them to do the right thing and draft Charles Cross or whoever the best left tackle is available at 6. Because I think Evan Neal and Ike Ekwonu are both going to be off the board by the time 6 happens, based on my board. But if any of those 3 guys are on the board at 6, they need to take him. They need a left tackle. Because it doesn't matter who their quarterback is, they're screwed behind that offensive line right now. Particularly the left side of that offensive line right now. So with that being said, if they do draft a rookie quarterback, like I've been seeing at 6, like potentially Kenny Pickett, because I think at this point Sam Darnold's broken. Sam Darnold is broken. If Kenny Pickett goes there, he's going to end up busted too. It's not going to matter. They just need to either decide whether they believe this coaching staff will get it right next year, because this year's already screwed for the Panthers. Unless they do draft, one of those top tackles, and then are able to get Desmond Ridder or Sam Howell or someone later in the draft. It's the way I look at it. That's the way I see it. And even then, I don't know. They're not going to be a winning team this year, regardless of what they do. So they're big losers. And then I don't think I'm going to go further than that on the winners and losers. Now I'm just going to give out some wacky awards. You have, Trent Balk is getting the Dan Snyder George Allen Award. What is it, George Allen, who was the team president there for so freaking long? He's getting the Snyder Allen Award for most explicable free agent contract. Very fitting title for a very fitting award for a very fitting recipient. For the Christian Kirk and Zay Jones deals. Just I'm going to give Ron Rivera and Marty Herney the Backstabber Award for playing dirty to keep J.D. McKissick from going to the Bills by, one, showing up after for basically lying about former employees and colleagues and employees in Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane. It's Brandon Beane, right? The GM for the Bills. The Bills GM. They played dirty. And potentially burned bridges. Don't expect the Washington Commanders and Buffalo Bills to be doing much business in the future on the trade market. For the you know what? I'm not going to name that. Now that I'm thinking about it, that would probably be a bad idea for monetization. I'm not going to do that. for just the best contract signed in all of free agency, I'm just going to go out and say that out of all the contracts signed in free agency, I think the best one was the Teron Armstead deal by the Dolphins, based on the market for top end offensive tackles. Getting him for what was $17.5 million a year in a market where there were a bunch of teams that really needed offensive line help for their young quarterbacks. Look at the Bears, the Jaguars. Oh, I forgot about the Cam Robinson franchise tagging. Like, oh my gosh, $19 million a year for like one of the worst tackles in the league. I think I mentioned it, but I didn't finish the thought for the Jaguars. Trent Baalke, everyone. But Teron Armstead and the Miami Dolphins, best. I think that was the best contract of free agency. Or we'll say on the high end, that was the best one. I thought the Chandler Jones contract was a really good one for the Raiders as well. For like the bargain bin like contract area, I'm just going to throw it out there and say that Nichols' contract, which I believe was 2 years, $11 million. It's like $5.5 million a year. Really good bargain deal right there. And Miles Jack to the Steelers. That was a really good, like, cheapo bargain bin move. Obviously, the worst contract just goes to Christian Kirk. I put that in the Snyder Allen just free agency moron, whatever. Like, just that bad, just bad executiveship. But Christian Kirk just alone, that is the worst contract of free agency. Period. Full stop, end of story. Just, what are you doing? And then I'm going to give this award out. The Holy Crud, Holy Crud, that just sounds so... That's so PG. Wait. Here's what we're going to name it. The He's Still in the League award to Josh Johnson, who has signed on as a backup quarterback with, I believe it's the Broncos. Yes, the Broncos. Which is like his 10th NFL team. It's some ridiculously high number. If it's not double digits, it's almost at double digits now. He was on the Commanders, I think, last year. Or the year before. And that's just NFL teams. That's not including the XFL, where he was part of the Los Angeles team. He was quarterback for the Los Angeles team. I think he had a cup of coffee in the CFL too. So, Josh Johnson still kicking. So he's like 33, 34 now. His career would be really interesting if he had come along, like, say, 10 years later. I think, because of his tools. And at this point, you could argue the same with, like, Tyrod Taylor. That dude might have ended up a first-round pick. And then, for just the biggest media circus award, which, it seems like it's a no-brainer, but think about all the just craziness since, the season ended. You had the circus and drama around Aaron Rodgers. There were the questions about Russell Wilson. Brady retiring and unretiring. I mean, because there was speculation in the intermediate that he was trying to get out of there, that there's talk that he was trying to get to Miami, bunch of different stuff. And then, of course, the big one, and my winner is Deshaun Watson. Because, and this one was sneaky because it seemed like everybody was trying to just not talk about Watson. They were ignoring it until there was nothing else. And now it's all, everybody, you know, and a lot of it is because of people's personal beliefs and philosophies on what they think he may or may not have done, stuff like that. Because there's a moral quotient. I do think to some degree there is kind of a political and social capital thing at stake here, because I do think for a certain segment of people, you know, they believe everything. They'll believe any accusation. You know, had a couple people say, well, you know, I do believe them because I went through something and da-da-da-da, or because this happened to me and da-da-da. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Just remember that thing happened to you. None of us know whether that happened to those people. And that might sound callous, but, you know, and this typically, the most vehement comes from people who, like, you know, this happened and, you know, the person who victimized them got away with it. You know, I'm not here to, I can understand that and understand, you know, why they feel the way they feel, why they have the opinion they have. But for the people I was talking to, like, they got justice. And I don't know. To me, maybe this once again sounds callous. I'm like, it's very possible that there are no victims here. And it's very possible that everyone here, if we're actually looking at it and saying there's no victims here, then maybe Deshaun Watson maybe is the victim here. But I'm not going to go that far. So that's your biggest, the Tim Tebow Media Circus Award. And I don't mean that as a slight to Tim Tebow. I just mean Tim Tebow was so awesome as a person. He was such a good guy and such a great Christian role model that the entire mainstream media wanted to destroy him. Because in comparison, they were all pathetic losers. And I am going to be that strong and that rude about it, because that's how strong and rude they were to him. So, we're going to give that award to Deshaun Watson and the Cleveland Browns. I guess we should give the Cleveland Browns for the biggest media headache. Man, it's amazing how, like, the Browns managed to continue to keep themselves in, like, the just media dumpster fire conversation, by the way. Isn't it kind of incredible? You know, for so long they were terrible, poorly run, and losing all the time. They draft Baker Mayfield and immediately go on the best run record-wise they've gone on since they've been brought back as a franchise. Made the playoffs in 2020, won a playoff game in 2020. And, you know, a year later, or a little more than a year after that, they trade for Deshaun Watson. Well, first they tried to get Watson. Failed. Try to go back to Baker, and Baker says, no, screw you, and rightfully so. You know, you're right, it is a business. Guess what's not good for business? You trying to get someone else to take my job. That's not good for my business. Him saying, screw you, them lucking out and Watson changing his mind and wanting to come to Cleveland. And now they've got this giant media headache. And no matter how good they are, they're always, or the media is always going to treat them like scumbags from here on out. Well, until they decide to flip on Watson's accusers if he does become successful and whatnot. But I don't know. From what it seems like to me, personally, I just think that ESPN maybe is just being racist to Deshaun Watson because he's a black quarterback. But, hey, I'm not about racism here. But ESPN, maybe they are. Because mostly I've been seeing a bunch of white people getting on Deshaun Watson. Maybe that's what it is. But Browns, they cannot escape. They just can't escape the dumpster fire. They have to throw themselves back in it. It's incredible. I hate it for that fan base. The organization just wants them to be in a constant state of terror and despair. With that being said, we'll get into the college football stuff on Monday. So, because I can't believe I went an hour 50 on all this. I hope y'all have a great weekend. I will be back Monday with more BlindEyeLive. And please follow me on Twitter at HunterK13. The H and K are capital. I throw some tweets up on there, and I post I post updates on the show from there. And then I technically have an Instagram. I don't know if I wanted to shill that because I don't really use it. I need to start. I plan on starting. Maybe I will once I start putting content up on there. But please, like, show, comment below, subscribe if, you want to do any of those things.